You might think the final goal of your retirement planning is leaving behind a bunch of money to your family. The truth is not what you leave them, it's how you leave them that counts. Welcome to Retire Today. I'm your host, Jeremy Keil, and we're here to help you create your dream retirement. Now, today we're talking about step 5 of the retirement master plan, which is leave. Sometimes when you're creating your master plan, you leave behind some money. Sometimes you leave behind a mess. We're hoping you want to leave behind a meaningful legacy, leave behind some money. And I quoted in the intro earlier, David Eady, who's on my podcast. He has a book about helping executors do their job. And he had said that it's not what you leave them, it's how you leave them. His journey started with being in the probate courts for, I believe, over 7 years because of how money was left behind in his family. Something you don't want to have experience yourself. And that's what you're wanting to do, is make sure your family, the people you care about, don't experience that. And when you're thinking about the things you leave behind, kind of the final steps that you're taking, a lot of times you're just thinking of the estate planning, right? The documents that you put together. But it's more than that. It's all about planning for the big retirement risks. There's 3 big retirement risks you want to plan for. It's not about, let me put together this great plan and everything looks great, everything does well. When everything does well, it's preparing for the risks that could derail your retirement plans. And then hopefully, yes, you've prepared for those risks. There's some things you leave behind. You do want to have the documents in place. You want to have things easier for your family. Now, this is the 5th step. I've gone through the past 4 weeks, all the 5 steps, the first 4 steps of creating your retirement master plan. If you want to go through, learn how to create your retirement master plan, I've got my book, Retire Today. You can head on over to jeremykeil.com for a link to buy the book. Now let's go through those big retirement risks, the 3 big retirement risks that you want to plan for your own retirement, and take care of your own retirement. And then we'll start taking care of others and the documents you need to have set aside for that. So we're going to go through the 5th step, all those things that help yourself, help your family. The number 1 big retirement risk you want to plan for after you've done all your planning to begin with is say, what if I live too long? You might be thinking, how could living too long be a retirement risk? Isn't living a long, healthy life, happy retirement, the long, healthy, happy retirement, is that the goal? It is. But also, as I've heard retirement expert Moshe Milevsky say, I've heard him at a couple different conferences, he often says that living longer than expected is the great risk multiplier. So think of what might have you worry going into your retirement. You're worried about, will inflation eat up my retirement savings? Will the interest rates be too low with my investments? Will the market volatility hurt me with the way that I've got my investments going? Will I run out of money? Will the cost of healthcare be too high? Those are the 5 things people are thinking about. All the studies show those are the big worries people have going into retirement. But longevity, living longer than expected, is a great risk multiplier. Think about it. If you live longer than expected, inflation has longer of a time frame to affect you. The longer you live, low interest rates affect you more. If you don't live too long, the stock market might go up and down. Well, you won't be around too long. But the longer you live, the ups and downs really can hurt you. The longer you live, the more likely you are to run out of money. And the longer you live, usually the worse your health gets and the higher your healthcare costs come along with it. So as you create your plan, you got everything set through the way you think it's going to work out well for you in the first 4 steps. Go back and think again, well, what if I live too long? And how do all my decisions earlier affect me if I live longer than expected? And as you've heard me before talk about, when you're planning for your median life expectancy, that only happens half the time. You only hit that half the time you live longer than expected. So this is a likely scenario. Half the time you'll live longer than expected. So go back and think your decisions before you lock them in, set them in stone over how will I be affected? How will my family be affected if I live longer than expected? That's the first big retirement risk. The second big retirement risk is you die too soon. It's the opposite. One risk is you live too long. The next risk is you live not long enough. And it's going to happen half the time. That median life expectancy means half the time you live longer, half the time you don't make it there. So the ways I think you ought to go about planning for what happens if I don't make it as far as I expected. There's really two big things I point out. The first is that when you're creating your lifetime income plan, your decisions about Social Security, about your pension, if you have one, is consider how your choices affect your surviving spouse, right? If you're married, one of you will be outlasting the other one. And your decisions on Social Security, on pension, are often one-time decisions you can't change. And so before you make those decisions, think about, how is my spouse going to be affected if they have a long lifetime without me? How will the Social Security going down, perhaps the pension going down, affect my spouse, depending on these decisions I made? Hi, it's Keil here, and I know you're listening to the Retire Today podcast because you would like to create your dream retirement. I created a free video course to show you just how to do that. Head on over to 5stepretirementplan.com to learn how to create your retirement master plan. That's 5stepretirementplan.com. You can use the number or spell it out. You'll get there either way. Head over to 5stepretirementplan.com. Thanks for listening, and now for the rest of the show. The other part too, really maybe more related to yourself, is a lot of people put through a travel budget in their retirement planning. I'm going to spend $5,000 a year for 30 years on extra vacations. And I'd encourage you, don't have a travel budget, have a vacation bucket. This is not my idea. I'm not sure where I heard it from first, but think through how as people get older, they spend less time traveling. They spend less time on vacations. When you go from two people and a couple down to one, often your travel cuts down quite a bit as well too. So instead of thinking, okay, $5,000 a year for 30 years, think $150,000 in my vacation bucket and feel confident then, well, I'm going to maybe spend $10,000 this year or $20,000 this year. I'm pulling out of my vacation bucket. And yes, I might have busted your travel budget this year, but you've got this money set aside and you are planning out your vacation bucket. You're feeling comfortable spending more on travel earlier because you're here. You don't know if you'll be here down the road. Think about with your traveling, with your vacations, what happens if I don't make it as far as I thought I would? Now, big retirement risk number 3 is you get too sick. It especially happens the longer you live, the more likely you are to have your health decline. And really, there's 2 places here to keep in mind. It's your long-term care, if I'm around for a long time and I need extended care. And it's also your Medicare, your health insurance choices long time. For both of those, your long-term care, your Medicare, I'd encourage you to don't base your decisions today on what's cheapest today. Think through the long term of how does this health insurance plan help me when I'm 20 years older and I'm unhealthy? How does this long-term care plan help me when I'm 20 years older and I'm having trouble making some of these decisions on my own? That's the way you need to approach these things, because often you make it far enough into retirement, it's either too expensive or the insurance companies won't let you in if you want to get the long-term care. Or with Medicare, I've got a lot of resources on jeremykeil.com. When you log into there, you go to jeremykeil.com. I've got a lot of Medicare resources because I've done a lot of podcast, YouTube videos about this. Really with Medicare, a lot of times it's like you're choosing your lane. Are you choosing the Medicare Advantage lane or the Medicare, the original Medicare lane? And often you can't change lanes. And so your decision when you hit 65, your decision approaching retirement shouldn't be what gives me the cheapest premium today, who's going to give me the fanciest little thing that's part of it today, is what's going to help me out in the long run, because you can't change that lane. You often can't change that lane once you start going on it. Make your decision based on the long term and on these big retirement risks. Now, with long-term care, I'll say 2 things about it. The first one is that you ought to have a long-term care plan. You don't necessarily need to have long-term care insurance. Maybe you go through, you plan things out, and you decide you're not going to have a long-term care insurance policy, but you want to have a long-term care plan. Think through, when I get older, when I have some sort of health issue where I need the extra help, who is going to help me out? How am I going to pay for it? Where is this going to be? Is it going to be at home in a facility, right? Think through these choices and make some decisions on your long-term care plan. Second thing I'll say is stay tuned. Fairly soon, I'll have a long-term care episode. So make sure that you subscribe to the Retire Today podcast or Retire Today YouTube videos that are on the Mr. Retirement YouTube channel. You'll get that long-term care planning video and podcast that I'll have coming out soon. Now, we've talked about the retirement risk to yourself. Let's think through the estate planning part of it. This whole section of the book, this whole idea of what you're planning for, I call it your legacy protection plan. Part one is preparing for the big retirement risks, making sure your retirement will do well, even when some of these risks hit you. Part two is your estate planning. And when it comes to estate planning, think of the different goals that you have. Goal number one with your estate planning is protect yourself and your spouse in case bad things happen. Goal number two is to make your inheritance as easy and tax efficient as possible. Let's talk about estate planning goal number one first. I said protect yourself. You think estate planning, it's like, what happens when I'm gone? You're still around when a lot of these estate planning things happen. There's some basic estate planning documents that you want to have set up for when you're alive. It's often the healthcare power of attorney, the financial power of attorney, the marital property agreement, the healthcare directive, and living will. I go through each of those in detail, chapter 10 in my book, Retire Today, and I'll be doing a podcast fairly soon down the road talking specifically about the estate planning. So you'll see that coming down here. Just trying to summarize things for you. Step two, your estate planning goal number two, make your inheritance as easy and tax efficient as possible. There are some basic estate planning documents you need when you're not alive. You need the estate planning documents when you're alive, like those power of attorney. There are some documents you want to have when you're no longer alive. Often that's a will. Quite often that's a trust. A lot of times when people are asking me about estate planning, they say, do I need a will or trust? You'll be surprised to hear from an attorney when you go talk to your lawyer, they'll probably say both. You need a will and you need a trust. Even if you have a trust-based estate plan, even if you've got things set up to say, I've got trustees putting this together and making sure things happen according to the rules in my trust, you'll often have a will. And the will is there for a couple of reasons. One, it just invalidates all your old wills. If you've set something up 5 years ago, 50 years ago, your new will today says, whatever happened in the past, this is legit. That's gone. The past is the past. What I put in the will today is the new document that things are supposed to follow. The other reason why you have a will, even though you might have a trust, is your will is there just in case things don't happen to hit the trust. You can have a trust set up, but if the money doesn't go into the trust, meaningless, doesn't affect it. So you have a will just in case certain parts of your estate, your investments, don't happen to hit the trust. Or the will likely even says, oh yeah, by the way, if I can, and I didn't get it there, I want the money, these things, these accounts to go and flow through the trust. Now, I talked about wills. I talked about trust. As you're reading the book, most of your money probably won't even go through your will or trust. The retirees I talk to have money saved in their 401k, their IRAs, they've got life insurance, they have brokerage accounts, they have transfer and death accounts at the bank. None of those will go through your will or trust. It won't go through your estate process like you think of with the will and trust. It'll go through beneficiary forms. Your beneficiary forms are highly important documents. It's all about making sure that you have the instructions you want, perhaps you set out with your will, with your trust, on the beneficiary forms. And so you think your estate planning is wills and trusts and powers of attorney. A lot of the things you'll do is make sure your beneficiary forms for your 401k and your life insurance, your IRAs, match what you have set up with the trust. Or maybe even the beneficiaries say this money goes through the trust, right? You took all this time to set up a trust, but if you didn't change your beneficiary form to let the money go to the trust, if that's what you and your lawyer figure out, it's meaningless, right? So your beneficiary forms, kind of the hidden secret of the estate planning industry, is you set up all these wills and trusts and things, and most of your money doesn't even flow through that will or trust. It flows through the beneficiaries. And yes, sometimes and often you might have your beneficiaries set up so that it goes through the trust. We'll be talking in depth on estate planning and these different forms fairly soon on a podcast. So make sure to subscribe to the Retire Today podcast, whether you're listening on your phone or watching me through the Mr. Retirement YouTube channel. Thank you for listening to the Retire Today podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you will feel better about your money and you will make better money decisions. Hi, I'm Jeremy Keil. If you'd like to learn how my team can help you get more income, pay less in taxes, and avoid big retirement mistakes, head on over to keilfp.com. That's KEILFP.com.